Hi dancers, Jess here. Welcome back to the Whole Dancer YouTube channel. Today I'm going to dive into food guilt. This is something that comes up for many dancers, many people. In fact, a study showed that something like 30% of the food Americans eat, they feel guilty about. So food guilt is a big thing. And every time that we feel guilty about food, they say can have an impact on you about 20 minutes every time it happens. And for most people, that's happening about 5 times a week. So it's a lot of time spent feeling guilty about the choices you're making around food. Now for dancers, as I always like to point out, the body image stuff can be even more challenging to cope with or manage because of the pressure that you feel to look a certain way. The food stuff can have a whole nother level of guilt and pressure surrounding it because it is so connected, obviously, to our bodies. So if you deal with food guilt, today I'm going to chat through 5 ways to start to sort of manage it, some ways to work through it, so that you can find that place where food is fuel and food is enjoyment and food has a role in your life that is all good things, and we recognize the changing role that food might have from day to day or week to week. Before we even get into the tips, it's really useful to recognize that environmental stressors and life situations can lead us to use food in different ways. You might have a stressful experience in life, you might have a celebration. These are things that can lead to eating for celebration or comfort. These are things that can lead you to using food in ways that you don't typically use it on a day-to-day basis. Or perhaps it's just in ways that fall outside of your definition of how you should be eating food. So we have to start to really let go of that. And now to get to those 5 tips. So the first tip is to acknowledge and stay curious about when food guilt comes up for you. It's very likely that it's coming up surrounding specific foods or in specific situations. You might notice that there are consistencies in when you're experiencing food guilt. Maybe it's dependent on who you're dining with or what food choices are available to you. When we can just get curious and start to identify these things, then you might see patterns happening, or you might be able to get a little bit more clarity in terms of where that guilt has originated in that specific circumstance. So let's say it's when you're eating with a friend, and maybe this friend chooses food that is just the pinnacle of health by definition, and you don't always make that same choice, and then you start to sort of question or feel guilty about the choice that you did make. And so the key here is going to be to remember that we're all in our own place with food. We're all making decisions based on what's best for us. And this might mean for you to choose exactly what you want to eat in that moment. And we have to, whenever we're comparing our food choices to those around us, you have to remember that you never know where someone happens to be with their food experience or relationship anyway. So this friend might choose these things because she thinks she should, or because she is so consumed or worried about food guilt. Or she could choose it because that's what she wants to choose. Either way, we don't know for sure. So the key is to tune back into you and what works for you and what food choice you want in that instance. We don't always have to choose the most nutrient-dense option on the menu. This is where the question of balance comes in, and figuring out your personal balance with food is going to be key. So once you've acknowledged and stayed curious about when the guilt is coming up, you're going to start to ask yourself why. Why am I feeling guilty about eating this specific food? For so many of us, this comes back to comments made by dance teachers or friends or siblings or parents. And sometimes it's just like a single offhanded comment. And other times it might be, my parent has always consistently over the years said, this is such bad food, sugar is evil, those kinds of things. So what is the language, or what are the words that have been used surrounding these foods? So when we use big negative words about candy or cookies or chocolate or whatever it is you might feel guilty about eating, that's where the guilt is coming from. It's at least part of where it's coming from. So ask yourself, why is this guilt here for me? Start to get clear about where it perhaps originated. If you can't figure it out, it might be bigger impact of media, of messages in, I always talk about this, like food advice and info is just everywhere. And there will be headlines on morning news shows about how, sugar is the leading cause of XYZ disease. So we have to remember that these messages are coming from all sides now. So ask yourself, where did this come from? Why do I feel so guilty about eating this thing? And just try to come up with the answers. I always say the more you can write things down, more likely that you'll gain greater clarity in these areas. So write some things down, ask yourself these questions, really dive into it, stay curious, and discover what the why behind that guilt might be. This next one I really love for dancers. It's really so valuable to see the true benefits of all the food you might be eating, but that's what I want you to do. The foods that induce guilt, especially, ask yourself, what is the benefit or value of this food? For something like cake, it might just be that it enhances the enjoyment of my birthday or some other celebration. For any foods that are, considered nutrient poor or less nutrient dense, they're still providing your body with calories and energy. And so it might just be that, oh, this is giving me some quick energy that can be useful right before I get into class. This is not to say that you're not going to then ask yourself, are there ways that adjusting this food choice or food option would in fact make me feel like it's really serving my body in more diverse ways? It's giving me a nutrient increase as well as the joy. And there are going to be times when you'll have options to adjust food choices in ways that make them even more beneficial. But in the meantime, I want you to start to think, what is the benefit of each of these different foods? Like it's summertime, so ice cream is just fun to go out and get ice cream with friends or family. And the fact that it's fun might be the benefit that you see in that. Now, if you're getting ice cream, right, there's also calcium and protein, and we can come up with some other benefits there as well. So think about these things. Know that you also have options when you're cooking at home, when you're baking for yourself, to make adjustments to ingredients in order to enhance the nutrient power of any given recipe. And I think that's a great way to just feel better about food choices, especially as sort of a step in between. If you have a really hard time getting your head around letting go of guilt in going out and getting ice cream, for example, maybe your baby step is going to be making your own ice cream at home, making some kind of blended fruit recipe that tastes delicious and refreshing and gives you the same satisfaction or similar satisfaction, but is guilt-free to you. We do have to work on the guilt itself, right? It shouldn't exist regardless of food choice. Any foods you're eating should be free from guilt because these are choices that you're making for a multitude of reasons, but baby steps along the way can really help to feel just more confident and at ease as you work towards allowing all foods into your eating plan. The next tip is to slow down and consider your overall food relationship. This is about feeling like your choices overall are balanced. So you have a good amount of nutrient-dense choices that you're making, and then you balance them with what we might say are more indulgent or traditionally guilt-inducing choices that we are working to remove the guilt from. But overall balance will allow you to say, oh yeah, it's fine that I made this choice. My overall eating plan is balanced. I include lots of fruits and vegetables and nutrient-dense foods. I include a variety of fun foods as well. And then with the food relationship, it's about tuning into yourself and asking, where is my point of satisfaction? So are you eating mindfully? Sometimes when we're eating these foods that make us feel guilty afterwards, I'll use French fries as an example, because that's another one that sometimes people feel guilt around. Any fried foods I hear guilt around from dancers. But so, say you're eating French fries, you might have an internal dialogue that says to you, this is it. I'm not getting French fries again for the rest of the month. So I'm going to eat all these fries and I'm not going to stop until they're gone. And I'm going to enjoy every single one. And it's going to be great, right? Or this is the only time I'm eating these for the rest of the year, or I'm never eating French fries again after this, right? We have all kinds of very absolute food conversations with ourselves when we're consuming something that can be guilt-inducing. Then you get to a point where you feel uncomfortable or you feel overly full, and that really just adds to the guilt. So the conversation with yourself always has to be, how does this taste? You have to ask yourself that question. If they're not the best fries, if they're not super delicious, if it's like, meh, these, I could take them or leave them, then have a couple and then honor that assessment of this food and move on and eat something else, or, see what other options are available to you in that moment. If they're delicious, if you're like, oh my God, these fries are so good, savor them. Really experience the taste, the smell, be mindful, be present. And then ask yourself at the halfway point, how do I feel? Am I satisfied? Am I still hungry? Are there other foods I would like to eat instead? Ask yourself this question again at the 3/4 mark, right? Is this something I want to keep eating? Am I satisfied? Do I want to eat something different? These are all really important questions in this assessment process along the way. Ultimately, you might decide to eat all of whatever it happens to be. These mindful moments of pausing, right? I say, like, put down the fork, sit back, have a sip of water, tune into your body and acknowledge how it feels. These moments of pause allow you to make really informed choices about moving forward. There is this mind-body disconnect where we do have to give our brain time to catch up to our body. So you're giving your mind and body that time to connect and decide, oh, am I satisfied by this food? Do I want to eat more? Know that sometimes that level of satisfaction comes before fullness. If it is a fried food, you might know from past experience, oh, if I eat all of this, even if I'm hungry for it, it's going to give me a stomach ache. This is what always happens for me, right? So then you go slow. You find the point of satisfaction that might come well before fullness. And that might mean that you switch to something else to eat, or you plan to have a snack in a couple of hours, but you're finding that balance for yourself, which is the last tip in eliminating food guilt. It is to ask yourself, what is my balance with these more indulgent or typically guilt-inducing foods, right? So for some of us, I always say this, you might have ice cream 7 days a week in a small amount. You might have ice cream a few days a week in like a big, glorious sundae. You might have ice cream a few times a month, right? We have to ask ourselves though, where's my balance? We also don't have to put strict parameters on it, like, oh, I'm an ice cream every night person, or oh, I'm an ice cream every few weeks person, because those are rules and we don't need those. But I want you to ask yourself on an ongoing basis, what's my relationship to this? What amount feels good to me? How much do I enjoy? When do I hit the point of satisfaction? And know that it's okay for it to ebb and flow over time. So important to do that. So if you've not yet, make sure that you are subscribed to the Whole Dancer YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you have more food guilt questions, if there's a scenario that I haven't covered in this video and you have a question about it, please let me know in the comments. I will write back to you, or you can also email me, jess@thewholedancer.com. I would love to connect. Food guilt is big. It impacts so many of us. But it's a working process to start to let go of that guilt. If you'd like to go a little more in depth and you would like a free coaching session, I'm going to link to that below in the show notes as well. But we can connect for a free coaching session, explore your relationship to food, talk about it a little bit more in depth, and I will give you some action steps to start making progress in this area as soon as we're done having our chat. So thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and I'll chat with you soon.